It might not seem like we're getting many appeals to logic these days, but I promise we do get them. What are they exactly? Well, they're one of the main ways that you can convince someone to believe you. Logos, not logos. Logos are different. They're used for branding and have more to do with credibility or identity and ethos than logic. Watch my video on credibility or ethos. Anyway, logos is a Greek word for an appeal to logic. So we're talking evidence, we're talking reasoning, we're talking facts, statistics, credible or expert testimony, sometimes even just a story that seems to make sense or backs up other things that you've heard. In the extreme, documents or communications that rely heavily on appeals to logic or logos can take the form of scientific reports or research studies, like you can see here. But we can also see these things in advertisements, TV shows, books, movies, you name it. A recent example of something that I thought was kind of an interesting way to talk about logos, the advertisement that Snapchat just got in really big trouble for. It was basically an advertisement for a Would You Rather game, asking people if they would rather slap Rihanna or punch Chris Brown. Rihanna posted in her Instagram about how this advertisement makes light of and promotes domestic violence because of its ineffective use of logical appeals. It asks you to choose between assaulting Rihanna or assaulting Chris Brown. So the logic in this is having the audience choose between which forms of domestic violence are preferable to them rather than the most logical choice, which is not taking in any part of domestic violence. And as you can imagine, as a result of all of this, Snapchat apparently bombed. The logical conclusions made by the people in the audience were that this advertisement was promoting domestic violence, and so Snapchat took a big hit. Ensuring that you're actually using logos correctly and to communicate a message that you think would be good for your audience can have a very powerful impact, even if we still see people falling for some logical fallacies. Speaking of logical fallacies, here are some really common ones to look out for. There are hasty generalizations, which are basically just stereotypes. As an example, assuming that all high school students eat Tide Pods. A way to get around these is to question everything, get evidence and context, and leave emotions out of the equation. There are also false causalities, which is assuming that one event leads to another just because one of them happened before the other one. There are straw man arguments, which is attacking a very weak argument in order to make yours seem stronger by comparison. And there are faulty analogies, which are inaccurate comparisons.
When I said before that I was king of forwards, you gotta understand that I don't come up with this stuff. I just forward it along. You wouldn't arrest a guy who's just delivering drugs from one guy to another.
But to kind of hit home about how often we come into contact with these things, you can also see that memes have elements of logic to them, which I know seems very strange, but I promise it's real. This whole meme, interestingly enough, is based on inviting argumentation, but that's not the only reason I picked it. There's an element of a logical appeal or use of logos in the red text not being rotated that supports the argument made in the statement through a visually credible presentation. Since it's not rotated, you're led to believe, oh yeah, you can't rotate text in MS Paint. Sorry, not sorry, I just explained an internet meme. Not sorry, because understanding logical appeals can help us figure out when we're the audience of someone trying to persuade us with whatever, as well as how to use our own appeals to logic once we've figured out which logical arguments are needed to persuade the person we're trying to persuade. Understanding logical fallacies is also really important to both constructing arguments as well as arguing against other people. You want to make sure that you're not using logical fallacies because they don't make any sense. Let me know if you'd like to see a video about those more in detail, because I could talk more about them. Before I go, don't forget to check out the video I made on how to argue in order to kind of contextualize this. And also, don't forget to look at my videos on appeals to emotion and credibility. Thanks.